Welcome back, everyone, to Chasing a Murderer. And today we are on part 161 of Life Beyond the Grave. We're moving right along. This is on the Lori Vallow and the Chad Daybell story. And we've learned a lot this week. We learned that Tylee Ryan is now deceased. She's been murdered. We've learned that Chad Daybell believes that he's building the City of Light. We also learned that Lori Vallow is very comfortable with going along with these plans. But one question I think many of us have asked is, was Lori always this type of woman, or did she suddenly change after meeting Chad Daybell? We've done the research and we show, where Lori Vallow had signs of being a very violent person back when she was married to Joseph Ryan. And we also learned that Lori Vallow has been talking to angels and Jesus before she met Chad Daybell. And we're going to talk about that today. Lori Vallow says her mission actually began back in 2017. We know this is most likely true simply because her brother Adam Cox mentioned how Lori believed that she was a translated being and she was speaking to Jesus, and they really didn't take it too seriously. But when Lori met Melenie Gibb, which led her to Chad Daybell, well, this became the recipe for the perfect storm. Since I've been covering this story, and I know you're probably interested as well, is why is it that Lori began seeking voices from the heavens and from supreme deities? As she went to the temple, she found some type of purpose, escape, or motivation in her life. We're learning that Lori was obviously stressed by caring for her own children, Tylee and JJ. And the truth be told, Tylee Ryan, who was a teenager, and everyone knows that teenagers are so easygoing, right? Was making life a little bit difficult for Lori. Lori mentioned that Tylee was sick a lot. She didn't like many people. And, she spent a lot of her time being angry. If you think about it, Tylee wasn't allowed to be free like most teenagers and spend time with friends, going off to movies. Instead, she was spending her time babysitting her little brother, JJ Vallow. And as JJ was growing older, he became a little bit more difficult to handle. Tylee is 16, nearly 17, and she should be involved with friends and dating and doing teenager things. Sadly, it seems that Tylee didn't have that life like other teens, and I can imagine this played a huge role on her mental state. Around this time, JJ was really taking up a lot of time for Lori, and she was worried about the negative responses JJ received being autistic. Very confusing. Lori Vallow seemed like a protective mother, yet she was aggravated and didn't want to deal with it at the same time. Lori's interest in end days and preparing for the second coming of Jesus Christ really grew out of control. So when she meets Melenie Gibb and Chad Daybell, and she starts doing these podcasts, she starts kind of wanting to take over. Like anything in Lori's life. I mean, if she come into your life, she wanted to take these life scenarios and turn them into her own idea of what she thought they should be. Lori has become very obsessed over her importance to God and her mission. And Lori, her entire life, seems to create problems, trying to get rid of problems. She's become a junkie for Jesus, but there are times that make you question if she really believed in Jesus at all. I have wondered, maybe you have too, whether Jesus was an excuse and not a reality. We also noticed that Lori seems to have several personas. The godly woman who has empathy to the moon and back. She can relate to your pain and your struggles, and it seems to be legit. But there's another side. There's an angry assassin that loses control where hate and disgust are her fuel. And once she's in assassin mode, she doesn't stop until the outcome she desires happens. This makes Lori dangerous because she can wear this persona of a very loving, empathetic woman at the exact same time that she's planning your murder. In my opinion, Lori is one of the most dangerous killers on this planet. I think what a lot of people don't realize is her mental state has always been in this place, but neglect of her mental health and obsession over the years allowed for it to grow in an uncontrollable state. Like I mentioned before, people like Adam Cox wanted to see his sister wake up from this very mental state, but they were afraid to help her because you have family members who would basically shun you if you did. They all knew that Lori was a little crazy, but they just looked past it. The real question is Lori crazy, or is she just a cold, calculated narcissist? When Lori blamed Tylee Ryan for killing JJ, that basically sums it up to who Lori Vallow really is. Basically, everything that comes out of her mouth is some type of manipulation or lie. And throughout this case and my research, I have hope that the family would have just a mentally ill person in their life that could get some help in therapy and snap out of it. No matter how you look at this case, one thing's for certain: Jesus would never agree to anyone killing anyone. And the reason for this, her manipulation for this, is saying that, like Job, who had everything taken away from him to prove his loyalty to God, she was having this same thing happen to her. And this is where she believes that she's that important to God that she will be made an example of. Lori has always had this mental state of feeling she wants to feel important. And everything that she's doing, it's just a manipulation tactic to explain away her evil deeds. And I'm so sorry to have to say that. I don't think, if anything, Lori wants to face how dark she really is. And instead of admitting how dark she is, she blames it on everyone else around her because Lori is never wrong. I feel bad for Colby Ryan because he's in this state still where he doesn't know what to believe about his mom. In September, Lori Vallow has gone through with one part of the plan, and that's to get rid of Tylee Ryan. And now they have plans for 3 more people that they refer to as zombies. Chad Daybell, Melenie Boudreaux's husband, Brandon Boudreaux, and her son, JJ Vallow. But I forgot to mention that there is another zombie. And that zombie is Rhonda, and it's attached to Kay Woodcock. Each day that goes by, there are more and more zombies. And what is really strange is all these zombies are coming from the people in their lives, the people that they loved, the people they once cared about. And Lori Vallow is not only focused on adults and her own children, but she's focusing on Melenie Boudreaux's kids next. So jumping back a little bit, Lori Vallow's mission, she said, began in 2017. She had talked to her family about multiple probations, as well as her personal visits with Jesus and Satan.
Did I tell you where that experience happened?
Yeah, you said you're in the temple. That's what I mean.
So So I learned all these things that I know from Jesus personally. So when he came to me in the temple and he put his hands on my head and ordained me to do something for him, like a job, right? And he said, will you do this job if you lose everything? This was in 2017. And then he said, will you do this job if you become like Job? That's what he asked me. And at the time, when he was right there with me, and you have those wonderful, heavenly, peaceful feelings, I thought, sure, I'll do anything you want me to. Go to the ends of the earth. I'll follow you to the ends of the earth like Peter. And then you walk into that scene and you're on the ground like Peter. Like, what is this about? What do you mean lose everything? I lost everyone, and including you, which was really the hardest loss of all to me, because you were my best friend for 24 years. And losing you over the past 4 years was harder on me than even losing the kids.
Ignore the last 30 seconds of this because that's jumping ahead a little bit. So Lori admits that she believes that her mission started in 2017. Important date for a lot of these people that are blaming Chad completely for her change. It seems like when Lori and Chad met, they brought their ideas together, they changed them a bit, and even added things. Some of those things, we've talked about it before, is portals. A lot of people are wondering where that come from, and really it come from several people from 2015 on mainly. People like Spencer, Julie Rowe, and several other people. Now they began to really focus on the fact that JJ's dark.
At some point, did you learn whether or not JJ had been labeled as dark? Yes. And what did you learn in relation to that? At what point did you learn that JJ had been deemed dark? Yes. Do you recall what you learned in relation to that? I don't remember super clearly on that, but just that at some point JJ was affected by some type of darkness. Did you ever learn anything in relation to Tylee being labeled as dark? Yes. And what did you learn in relation to that? That I believe Chad labeled her as dark. And do you know who it was that labeled JJ as dark? I assume that it was Chad.
So this isn't true. You hear these testimonies where they lied on stand completely, where they say they assume it was Chad, but later would say they got it directly from Lori every time. So Lori and Chad are kind of putting it out there who they think are zombies. Melenie Gibb would say that she was told that Tammy was now a zombie, that her original spirit was in limbo. Her spirit cannot go to paradise until her physical body is dead. For some reason, Melanie makes it seem like she doesn't understand what that means. There's no doubt in my mind that Melenie Gibb supports the preparedness and preparation of end times. She also supports the universal model and all things that are outside of the church teachings. She even supports the 144,000. But she'll, at the same breath, claim that she's not a supportive person for all these odd beliefs that they're teaching. So here is a clip from Nate Eaton's interview with Melenie Gibb.
Their clergy every 2 years and get a recommend that allows you to go into the temple. But you have to be living certain standards. And you're saying Chad and Lori clearly were not living those standards, or at least following the doctrines being taught.
Correct.
But they were still going to the temple.
Oh, yeah. That was her favorite place to go. So she did actually go to the temple, but maybe not to church.
She'd go to the temple, but not to church.
Yeah.
So did you know that their teachings weren't in line with the mainstream?
Yeah.
And did you talk with her about it?
Yeah.
And what was the reaction?
Well, when she taught me, she was leading me to believe they were true. So I didn't, there would be times where I'm like, do you think that's a good idea? Or do you think this is, those kind of thoughts? But I just kind of didn't voice a much opposition to it, but just more listened, just more listened.
Was there ever a time where you thought, whoa, this is too much. This crosses the line?
Well, I always thought this is a little unusual, especially, we'll get in talking about later about the zombie thing, but that was definitely unusual. That was hard to completely believe.
Yeah.
So Melanie makes it seem as if she believes anyways that Lori and Chad are the ones teaching her everything. But the truth of the matter is they all are throwing their ideas, what they want to teach, into this pot and sharing it. You would think these people that say that they stand for God would eventually learn that God doesn't lie. Now, it is true that Lori did try to manipulate them once she took control, but Melanie has her own head, and she seems to put all the blame onto Lori and Chad only, but she was part of the problem as well. But in this interview, Melenie Gibb tries to victimize herself.
Believe?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite unusual.
Did you feel, or did they make you feel special or chosen as they're teaching you these things, that you are one of the elect and you need to be with us?
Yep.
And how did that make you feel?
First I thought it was me, right? So first you have that feeling of, I don't feel like that's something, because I didn't get that personally from God, so I thought it was unusual. So she kind of had to keep talking me into it. That makes sense. Like, you really are, you need to believe this, and with much enthusiasm.
So this is the same woman that are going to all these conferences, these outside of the church events. And, she's being persuaded by two people. Around this time, Melenie Boudreaux seems to be having a very hard time. Her mental state is not in a really good place. Melenie Boudreaux has been attending firesides and neglecting her family, yet she cries she misses them. Here's her ex-husband, Brandon Boudreaux, testifying what he understood was happening with Melenie Boudreaux around this time.
Yeah, that's fine. And so Melenie Boudreaux, she started going to what I believe you testified, what she called firesides, correct? Correct. And were these different than what you would normally call a fireside?
Yeah, so I kind of just described what I think of as a fireside, but she was just going to people's houses, and they were doing meetings that weren't under direction of anybody from the church. And oftentimes they were focused on things that aren't things we talk about normally in church. Some of them were just...
What kind of things?
I didn't go to them, so I can't say what exactly was talked about, but I can share what came back from them, which was what made me concerned. She came home one time and wanted to get like $10,000 worth of food storage all at once because she was really concerned about the end of the end of times coming, the end of the world coming, and it just didn't seem very practical to me, and then there was other focuses that she would come home with. She had a fascination with like Jesus Christ and did he have a family and why was James named the Beloved? A lot of early Christian, early church things, and so I would share perspective, but I was also I kind of tried to share with her my perspective on. I served a mission for my church for a couple of years and shared something that I had noticed in that process that those people got really focused on not the core of believing and finding faith in Jesus Christ, but they got focused on things that were really far away from that, and it led to them falling away from the core of their faith.
And you said that you never attended any of these, can I use the phrase alternative firesides?
Yeah, that's fun. No, I did not attend any of them.
Did you ever attempt to?
I did ask if I could, mostly because I wanted to see what was going on in there so I could give her better perspective, but she let me know I wasn't welcome at them.
Do you know if Lori Vallow was at any of those firesides?
Yeah, I do. She was the one who invited her to them initially.
Again, for anything falling apart in everyone's life, there was a common denominator. And that common denominator was Lori Vallow. For some reason, Lori Vallow had her focus into Melenie Boudreaux. And if she does that, she most likely had some kind of plan. And what that plan is, you'll have to figure out as we go on. Brandon Boudreaux has been through hell. He has fought tooth and nail to try to keep his wife, but it's become too dangerous. She's become a little too aggressive. Around this time, Brandon Boudreaux and Melenie Boudreaux are sharing custody of their children, but that's about to all change here pretty soon. It's important to know that some of the things that Melenie Boudreaux was doing to her own husband were the same things that Lori was doing to Charles. Lori had told Melenie to go into Brandon's phone without his permission and block Charles from Brandon's phone before Charles passed away. So they were doing a lot of conniving and manipulating things to the people they were supposed to have loved. Both Lori Vallow and her niece, Melenie Boudreaux, were taking their loved one, innocent people, and turning them into their enemies. And they don't know why. Charles Vallow loved Lori so much, and Brandon Boudreaux loved Melenie very much. And for these two women, for no reason whatsoever that has been proven or not proven, destroyed these men's lives. This also destroyed their children's lives. Meanwhile, sometime in September, neighbors report that they see Chad Daybell has a few bonfires in the backyard. Now, when it comes to these teachings, you would think that the people in this area, the ward leaders, the state leaders, and the leaders in general would notice that Chad Daybell's kind of doing his own thing in their area. We know that they are kind of fighting amongst each other and what they're doing through their stake leaders. Why aren't these leaders kind of saying, we might need to put a halt to this? The stake and ward leaders, guys, they're like, they get all the rumors and the information. They know exactly what's going on and then some. In fact, Heather Daybell had complained about Chad Daybell multiple times. I've been waiting for these, leaders to come forward and say, hey, I made a mistake, and we hear this kind of stuff, and sometimes you just don't know how serious it can be or something. I think the most shocking, if you think about it, is Melenie Gibb. The way that she left her family, yet she would do these podcasts talking about, what it's like to be a mother of an autistic child. She would speak on marriage as if she was good at it and a professional at being married, yet she got divorced. She was speaking on the fact that she was closer to Jesus, yet everything that she was doing in her life was nothing to mimic anything that represents Jesus. And I often wondered, where was Melenie Gibb getting her money from? How could she be this great mother when she's never home? Her main goal in her life was getting involved with all these outside events attached to the LDS. And now Melenie Boudreaux is doing these same things. Lori Vallow. Lori was meeting with friends that she was trying to recruit, would say that they would have to give up their families. Their families would just be kind of in a way. For these women, the children come last. What I found interesting is Melenie Gibb's what seemed like hatred towards Tylee. She had no concern whether she's seen Tylee again or what happened to Tylee. We don't know how Melanie Gibb's dislike grew for Tylee, whether it was something Lori kind of manipulated, fed the monster, or if it was from Melenie Gibb's personal experience with Tylee. We hear them speak on their autistic children, of how special they are and their special needs, yet we don't see the parents actually putting in the time with these kids like they want people to believe they are. What I see is a bunch of psychopaths that are pretending that they're not psychopathic. They're preaching, but they're not walking. I want to introduce Chad's neighbor, Todd Gilbert, and he's going to share his thoughts and a testimony of what he thought about Chad.
How do you know them?
Mainly, I knew that Chad was an author, wrote books, and when we moved into the area, we got to know him because of that reason. And of course, Tammy was his wife, and so that's how we got to know them.
And was there one of the two of them that you interacted with more often?
Yes, Chad.
How often would you see Chad?
At least once a week, sometimes in the yard, most of the time, at least once a week at church.
And I may have missed it, but did you indicate when you'd moved to into Chad's neighborhood?
It was March 2017.
Did you meet Chad and Tammy fairly soon after moving there?
Yes, it was within a week.
Did you see Chad outside of church?
Sometimes, not real often, maybe mowing his lawn or something like that most of the time.
And you indicated you knew that Chad was an author. Had you read some of his books before?
Yeah, read some of them, yes.
Did Chad ever discuss his religious beliefs with you?
Sometimes he did. Sometimes we talked mainly about the books that he had written. Some of the stuff that he'd apparently, dreams and visions that he'd seen and how they related with some of the characters that was in his books.
And when you say characters in his books, was it your understanding those books were fictional?
Yes, he said they were fictional, patterned after his visions.
Did it appear that he was trying to teach you things or just share his beliefs?
At first, he was just sharing beliefs and just discussing his books. As time went on, he was pushing more that way towards teaching things towards the end there, or 2019.
And did the things that he was trying to teach you resonate with you?
If they were standard LDS church doctrine, it did. If they were not, I was kind of sitting on the fence. I don't know on that.
So you'd listen to him, but you didn't necessarily hold those
right,
same beliefs.
I didn't say usually one way or the other.
Do you recall a time in approximately February of 2019 when Chad came to your residence?
Yes.
And do you recall him making any kind of a statement that stuck out to you?
Yes, he made the statement as he was leaving that he says, I don't know if I should tell you this or not, but Tammy I've seen a vision that Tammy's going to die and move on before her 50th birthday.
Did you happen to know how old Tammy was at that time?
I didn't, but I figured she was around 46 748 area, I thought.
And had you made observations of Tammy? Would you see her at church as well?
Yes.
Did you ever notice anything with regard to her appearing to have failing health?
No.
Did you make observations of Chad and Tammy together when you would see them?
Yes, when we first moved into the ward, they sat very close up to the front and was together as a family. As time went on, especially from first part of 2019, they would slowly move them back further towards the back. And so about June of 2019, they were almost clear to the back. They seemed like they were a little distant from each other from what we had noticed before. And that Chad was talking less to me about stuff. And that he just says that people that talked about preparation was kind of getting a little old, and so everybody's taking a break.
We'll listen to more detail on Todd Gilbert later. But I wanted to, we're fixing to close this out, but I'm going to play a clip from a podcast Melenie Gibb did, and I want you to hear something and comment below what you hear from this statement.
Changing hearts. I've had a lot of pain. I've suffered with a lot of pain, and when I started to feel that love, I knew there was something more that God had to offer me. And since then, I have wanted to share that message because I wanted everybody to take of it, and I believe that everybody can. It's just a decision of desire to want to, and it's be willing to look in the mirror at yourself and not those around you. And when you're able to do that, everything changes, and the Lord will have love and mercy on you.
Thank you so much for supporting this channel. Thank you to my Patreons, and thank you to those who have shared the missing. Well, you have a lot of missing girls on our channel where their stories have gone cold. Thank you for sharing them on your social media. Don't forget to share them again today. Love you guys. I'll see you guys soon.